Good evening, everybody. Whew. All right, we are going to hop in this evening with our prayer requests and announcements. First of all, it is good to see you all. Thank you for your prayers for the group that was over in Israel. We had an awesome time. I'll never speak of it. We won't show you any pictures, and I'll just be completely silent about it, except for one picture tonight. But I will put together a presentation of some sort to kind of show you everything that we did do, everything we got to see. It was absolutely fascinating and just really, really neat to, I guess the best way I can explain it is like putting a face to the name and being able to see and walk the places that Jesus walked was an absolutely awesome thing. And I'm kind of decompressing still, so I don't know how to put it into words. I'm still tired and just going through my mind everything that we got to experience. But our prayer requests tonight that are on our list, James Bowman, we prayed for him a couple weeks ago, was in the hospital with kidney failure. Thankfully, he's at home now, is doing okay, but his wife, Margarita, fell and broke her ankle. And so she is recovering at home now with a cast and crutches. So make sure that we're in prayer for the Bowman family. Mike and Rosemary's brother, Charles Clyburn, will be starting a trial to reduce or control his cancer after his previous treatments have not worked to remove the cancer. So we're going to be in prayer for Charles. Also, Dixie Tharp got to go home for one night, and then she fell again. And so she's back in the hospital over the weekend. She's now at Advent Rehab, and visitors are very welcome. So she's in room 12 over at Advent Rehab. That's the prayer request that we have on our list. There is one thing that I need to correct on the announcements. It says that the Barnwood prayer breakfast is canceled for tomorrow. Now, I don't know about the ladies' prayer breakfast, or prayer. It may... Yeah, so Barnwood won't be serving breakfast tomorrow. I do know the men's breakfast is moving to the new Haystacks tomorrow, which is, if you don't know where that is, if you're one of our guys, that is back where Mount Dora Pizza is, that plaza there, right on the very end. So the men's breakfast will still meet, same time, just... They're in Mount Dora now? Yes. Yes, yep. And they're open back up. So I know the men's breakfast will still meet, but it'll just be at Haystacks tomorrow. The new Haystacks. Don't go to the old one. It won't give you any food. All right. One cool thing coming up is the area-wide singing night. It's March 31st. That is Friday, and that is going to be here from 7 to 8 o'clock. Please come and sing with us. That's going to be an awesome night. The memorial service for George and Bobby Clements is at 2 p.m. April 1st. That's Saturday here at the church, and there'll be a light reception to follow. There's a deadline coming up if anyone's interested in the Jamaica mission trip that is this summer. The deadline to put the down payment is coming up on April 2nd. And then last thing I have on here, there's an Orange Avenue Ladies Movie Night, April 3rd, to go see the movie that's coming out, His Only Son. And so Donna Allen is the contact for that. We're going to have to reschedule it. So we'll... There's so many people that aren't available that day. Okay. So that date... I'll contact everybody that's signed up. All right. So you heard it. If you have signed up for that, they're going to reschedule that date, and Donna Allen will get with you to let you know about the rescheduling. We have a spring gathering coming up on April 7th. There's a group going out to Lads the Leaders just to kind of check that out on April 8th. If you haven't heard, we're going to get ready to start up our Lads the Leaders program here at church, and we're looking forward to that. And then coming up April 9th, that's Easter Sunday, we're having our usual sunrise service out at the Baker's home, and that's going to start at 6:30 in the morning. And so that's always a beautiful time of singing and devotional right there by the lake. So if you join us, that will be an awesome, awesome time. All right, so let's go ahead and pray together. If you've got additional prayer requests, send those over to the office. Laura will get those taken care of. I usually take those down here, but I write with such chicken scratch by Thursday morning when I'm trying to give those to Laura, I can't read what I wrote. And so the best way to get those is to send those to Laura, and she'll get those in the bulletin. So let's go ahead and pray together, and then we'll hop into our study for the night. Our Father in heaven, we come to you tonight, and we just absolutely are in awe of you. God, it is good to be your children, and we're thankful that we get to be here tonight. We're thankful that we get to open up your word, that we get to learn, we get to study, and pray, God, that our study causes us to change in some way. And God, we're thankful for all the mistakes that we get to read about in Scripture. And I pray, God, that we can learn from those, that we will refuse to make those same mistakes. And God, that every single day we can just be closer and closer to you, and that we want to follow in the footsteps of Jesus every single day of our lives. So God, bless us as we study. And we want to ask that you be with those that we're praying for, the Bowman family, Charles Clyburn, Dixie Tharp, and all those that haven't been spoken tonight. And God, I pray that you give comfort where that is needed and healing where that is needed. And God, that in every situation, we know that you know it intricately, and we know that your will be done in all these things. But God, we ask tonight that we can be in a good posture so that we can study, that we can grow, and that, again, God, we can just get closer and closer to the place where everything we do is glorifying you. And we love you, and we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Again, I'm going to show you one picture from the trip. That's it. All right, tonight. But in the future, it probably won't be a Wednesday night. I don't know when we'll do it. We're still sifting through all the pictures of the group. We got those all compiled into one place, and we'd love to take you on that same journey that we went on just from the seats right here. But that I will tell you this, I do know that if anyone is interested in that same type of trip, James is leading one more group next year, and if you get the opportunity to go, then that is just an absolute awesome trip to go to Israel. If you need a little bit more time to save up to go on that trip, the reason I was going on the trip, other than going and experience everything, is that I was kind of learning from James on how to lead trips over to Israel. And I don't have anything set, but I would say in about 5 years, if you need that long to save, that's how long I'm going to take to be ready to lead a trip. Mostly because it needs to be a year that's not equip, and it can't be next year, and so it's going to have to be quite a bit down the road. So I look forward to doing that at some point. It'll be an awesome, awesome time. We spent a lot of our time up in Galilee. We stayed in Tiberias and got to see Capernaum and all different, like where Jesus did a bulk of his ministry. And then we made our way down to Jerusalem, where we stayed for about 5 nights there in Jerusalem and got to explore all the outlying cities, Bethlehem, and we were on Mount Carmel one day, and like I said, Capernaum, Tiberias, just all over the place, and it was just an absolute awesome thing. I floated for the first time ever in my life. I can't float. I can swim, just so you know. But we did get to go to the Dead Sea and float out there and have a blast. And it was just an awesome trip. The one thing I'm going to show you tonight is this, just because we've been in Judges, and I wish I would have gone and seen this a few weeks ago, because we had just talked about Gideon. And one of the cool places that we got to visit was the Spring of Herod, where Gideon had his men, 10,000 men, down at this spring right here. And at this spring is where they would have either knelt down to drink the water, or they would have lapped it up like a dog. And this is where Gideon's army went from 10,000 men down to 300 men. And that was kind of a side trip we got to stop and see. And we got to kind of wade in the stream part of it. but just absolutely cool to stand in the same place where this would have happened. And as we're looking at this spring, there's a valley off to the side that the Midianites would have been staying in, and then off to the other side is where the Israelite camp would have been. And of course, we know what happened with that. That Midianite valley there would have been where, like the camels, they said they were as numerous. When they looked in this valley and saw the camels, it was like the sands of the sea, and they were coming in and wiping out all their food. So that very valley would have been where Gideon led his men into. They surrounded them, and then they just started destroying themselves. And it really weird to be in that place, knowing what happened there, but really cool to stand at this spring and to think about what God did at that very place. And we got to stand there, and it was just awesome. Okay, I'll stop talking about it now, but because you're not here to hear that tonight. But in Judges chapter 7 is where you could have read that. So we're going to be in Judges chapter 13, 14, and 15 tonight. And we're going to get into one of the judges that you are very familiar with, but I want to spend some time in making sure that we are getting the full story of Samson. And so let me remind you, it's been a couple weeks. One of the saddest sections of Scripture is in Judges chapter 2 and verse 10. It says, "And all that generation were also gathered to their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, who did not know the Lord or the work that He had done for Israel." And so we have this awful leadership transition. We know that Joshua has died, and then after Joshua died, there seemed to be no succession plan. There was no one that was planned to take over leadership. Who did Joshua take over for? Moses, right? He took over from Moses. That was set. Moses, was working closely with Joshua, and it seems like nothing happened after Joshua. So it said all the men went back to the places of their fathers, and there was where this happened. That there was a whole generation that did not know what the Lord had done for Israel. We've been keying on that verse for multiple classes, and I just want to reiterate the challenge that is out there, that when we see our kids walking through the hallways, or when you see anybody younger than you going through the hallways of the church, or you see them at the school, if you're ever at the school, or even if you run out to them in public, if you see some of our children, not our children, but collectively our children, let's make sure that we're having spiritual conversations with our kids, that we are asking questions about their life with the Lord, rather than only asking about things like school and sports. It'd be really cool when those little ones run by to just either ask them, "Hey, is there anything I can be praying for you about this week? How's your week going? Are you studying the Bible?" You name it. You can ask so many different questions and just have a spiritually focused conversation. Because our goal is that a generation does not go by that forgets about the Lord. Now, we're very blessed. I think our kids have more Bible knowledge than many adults. They are in the Word, they are smart kids, but it's our job still to teach them how to live out that faith that they're learning about. And so, man, if you pull one aside and talk to them about that kind of stuff, it does wonders for our children. There's a cycle of life of sin, basically, that the Israelites keep going through. They do evil in the eyes of the Lord. God sends them punishment or testing, and that comes in the form of some kind of outlying pagan territory coming in and kind of persecuting them in great ways. Like I said, with Gideon, it was the Midianites, it's been the Ammonites, it's been all different surrounding areas. As we get to Samson, it's going to be the Philistines, but he sends them these tests and punishments, and then it gets to the point where it's so bad that Israel cries out to the Lord because they are just absolutely crushed under the persecution. And of course, what God does, because He loves His people, and mercy triumphs over His wrath so many times throughout the Old Testament, that He sends them a deliverer or a judge. And I don't know how many judges we've talked about so far, but quite a few. And tonight we're going to start the study of Samson. So let's go ahead and open up our Bibles to Judges chapter 13, and we're going to do a bit of reading tonight. So in Judges chapter 13, let's talk about the first part of Samson's story. It's before he was ever born. But Samson is one of the odd judges because he is picked before he is ever born. Have we seen that yet with any other judge? I don't think so. We had Gideon, who was one of the weakest of the weak in all of Israel. At least that's how he described himself. And so he was a very unlikely character to actually be a deliverer for God's people. But I don't know if we've found a judge yet that was born to lead Israel. So let's see what happens in the first 7 verses of Judges 13. It says, "And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. And his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Therefore be careful and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. And then the woman came and told her husband, A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God, very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name, but he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death." All right, so we get this kind of foretelling that a child is going to be born. So who is Samson's father? Who is the child's father? What's his name? Manoah, right? Do we get his mom's name? We're not going to. It's just kind of the woman who is married to Manoah. And that's all right. We don't know her name. What do we know about his mom up to this point? She's barren. She's never had children. And most likely she would never have children. But she is visited by, we find out later, the angel of the Lord. To her, at this first part, she's visited by an angel. That's all she knows. And as she's visited by this angel, he gives her a really odd message for somebody who is barren and is without child. He tells her that you are going to surely conceive a son. And what does God ask for Manoah's wife? What does he ask for or from her about this son? What does he tell her about him? Drink no wine or any strong drink. Don't eat anything unclean. Let no razor touch the child's head, even from birth, because he is going to be a Nazarite. All right, what does that mean to be a Nazarite? All right, so flip over to Numbers chapter 6. In Numbers chapter 6, we get the first part of this Nazarite vow. And we get to understand a little bit of what this vow is. I'll read just a short section of it. It says, The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the people of Israel, and say to them, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazarite, which Nazarite means one separated or one consecrated. This is to become a whole, like a separated kind of person, a consecrated person before the Lord. To separate himself to the Lord, he shall separate himself from wine and strong drink. He shall drink no vinegar made from wine or strong drink, and shall not drink any juice of grapes or eat grapes, fresh or dried. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, not even the seeds or the skins. In all the days of his vow of separation, no razor shall touch his head until the time is completed for which he separates himself to the Lord. He shall be holy. He shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow long. And all the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body, not even for his father or for his mother, for brother or sister. If they die, shall he make himself unclean, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation he is holy unto the Lord. All right, there's a little bit more to it, but that's kind of the section that we see that Samson is going to be, he follows the Nazirite vow, but the point is made in Judges that those are the things that he's really following. So to be a Nazirite, to take the Nazirite vow, is an oath from the very beginning of life that you are going to be separate and holy for God. And it is up to the parents to begin that, from birth, and then it's up to the child to continue that he drink no wine or strong drink, even vinegar that is made from the strong drink. And we see in the vow here as well, to not eat anything even from the grapevine itself. We got one other detail there. It wasn't just about food and drink or a razor. There was one other stipulation in the Nazirite vow. What was the last one that we saw? That he shall go near no dead bodies, right? Even if mom or dad pass away. Yeah. Oh man, you think that's a hard one, but man, that second part of that stipulation is tough. Even if mom or dad passed away. Now listen, Samson is the only child. All right, so if mom or dad pass away, he's not allowed to go and take care of the body, even as the only son of mom and dad. And so it is kind of a big deal. You would think it wouldn't be too hard to not go near something dead. You would think that'd be the easier part of the Nazirite vow, but it does prove to be kind of difficult. So let's move forward in Samson's story. Let's read verses 8 through 23 in Judges chapter 13. It says, Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we are going to do, or what we are to do with the child who will be born. And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me. And Manoah arose and went after his wife and came to the man and said to him, Are you the man who spoke to this woman? And he said, I am. And Manoah said, Now, when your words come true, what is to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, Of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, or eat anything or any unclean thing. All that I have commanded her, let her observe. So Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, Please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, If you detain me, I will not eat of your food. But if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that this was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, What is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? So Manoah took the young goat with the grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. And the angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. And then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to his wife, We shall surely die, for we have seen God. But his wife said to him, If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would have not accepted a burnt offering and grain offering in our hands, or shown us all these things, or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and called him Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. All right, so this is no ordinary child, is it? Samson is born, and we're going to know a few things about Samson real quick. First of all, we know that he is consecrated unto the Lord. You know, that's kind of one of those things. We do similar things here at church, but definitely not to this kind of extreme where when babies are born, it seems like we always have groups of babies born. And that's awesome. Babies at church are an awesome thing. And we always do like a baby dedication, type thing. And really what that is we want to be a congregation who is praying for and over our little ones. And we want to urge and encourage our parents to dedicate their children to the Lord. They are our most precious resources, right? And they're our greatest responsibility. And so as a church, we agree that, hey, we are going to train up these children to know the Lord, but as parents, they will do absolutely the same thing. That's the dedication that is made. But even in that dedication, there's not specific things like this Nazirite vow. But Samson is going to live a pretty strict life. He's not going to eat or drink of anything from the vine. He is not going to shave his head. The razor will never see his head. Will never cut his hair. And he is not going to go near anything that is dead or unclean. Sounds pretty simple. You just don't cut your hair, right? You just don't go by something unclean. You just don't eat anything. But to understand the culture of when he is growing up and when he is living, he is going to be going against much of the stuff that most of the young men would be doing at that time. Most of their drink would have been coming from the vine, right? That's most of what they would have been doing. How many clean water sources do you think they had all the time back then? There's springs in some places and stuff like that, but in a lot of places, there's just not clean type of water like they're supposed to be, like we would understand. Most of the young men, where do you think they'd be getting food and stuff from? Killing animals, right? If Samson were to kill an animal, he would violate the vow. Unless he did it from afar and somebody else went and got the corpse of that animal. But he was not to touch anything that was unclean. He was totally consecrated before the Lord. And you get this really cool interaction between Manoah, his wife, and the angel of the Lord. Manoah finally figures out who it was. But I think one of the coolest things in all of that is actually from the end, around verse 24, or 24 and 25, especially 25, where it says this, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him. And this is a young man. A young man, and the Spirit of the Lord started to stir in him. Now, what do you think that means? Yeah, definitely. That could be a lot of it. That he started to, if you didn't hear what Dave said, that he started to maybe think about the things of the Lord and who he might become as a person who follows after the Lord. That might be a lot to do with it. We're going to see about Samson that he is, we'll see it in the next chapter, that the Spirit of the Lord rushes on him. And from the very beginning, even as a young boy, he was able to experience something that a lot of people don't experience, and that is the power of the Spirit of God, where he was doing things that were totally abnormal. People don't do the things that Samson ends up doing as long as he kept that vow. It's just not something that happens with people. But he started to have something different inside of him, and that was the Spirit of the Lord. So we're going to see what happens with the Spirit of the Lord. Does Samson always do things right? Goodness, no. He was a knucklehead just like many of us. All right? Samson seemed to find trouble in one place. And where was that place? Wherever he was. But he had one area of life where he struggled a lot, and that was with the women. Samson liked the ladies, let's just say that. And we'll see, he didn't always pick the best ones. And it's easy for us to look at Samson and say, why didn't you know? But in reality, he did what many of us would do. So chapter 14, at the very beginning, here's what it says. Samson went down to Timnah. And at Timnah, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. The red flag should go off in our heads right now. All right, what's the red flag that goes off in our heads right now? Philistine. What's the problem with that? Do what? That's right. So the Philistines at this point are the oppressors of the Israelite people. And it has been one of the stipulations that God has given for a long time now, that they are not to intermarry within those Canaanite tribes that were around. Now, this is a different circumstance, though. We're going to read something here in just a second that's going to kind of make you think a little bit. But this pursuit of this Philistine woman was actually a part of God's plan. This wasn't just Samson going off and doing whatever he wanted to do, but we see that it's actually a part of what God was wanting to happen. It's a little bit odd. All right, so he came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines of Timnah. And he says what every young man says to his father and mother when he sees a girl he likes, now go get her for me as my wife. All right. But his father and mother said to him, is there not a young woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. All right. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. So that's an odd verse, isn't it? That God was kind of spurring Samson on, or had given this opportunity at least for Samson to marry outside of his own people. But what was the purpose of Samson marrying a Philistine woman or going after a Philistine woman? Yeah, to start conflict. That seems odd for the reason, but to start conflict to eventually release Israel from the Philistines. But God wanted this to happen so that the conflict could begin. And what we're getting ready to read the next two chapters is a lot of conflict. All right, and God, just through one man of Samson, starts to do some really crazy stuff around the Philistines. So let's just continue for a few more verses here. In verse 5 it says, then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. All right, red alert right there. They came to the what? What's wrong with that? Grapes. All right, so he's in the danger zone already. All right, so he is already near or around something he shouldn't be around as he's pursuing a Philistine woman. And behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. Now let's stop right there. What would most of us do? Yeah, good luck. Good luck running from a lion, but that's what I would do too. I don't know what you're supposed to do if a lion comes after you. I just hope to never be in that circumstance. But this lion comes roaring and running towards him, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. Now, I don't know how one tears a young goat, all right? But it seems like he just picked up this lion and tore it apart with absolutely no conflict. You know, a goat's not going to fight back. A goat's not going to attack you that I know of. But he just picks up this lion and he tears that thing apart in defense. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Why would he not tell his father or mother what he had done? Because at that moment, what did he do? He killed something, and in his hands, at least for a moment, was death, which made Samson unclean, which violated what? The Nazirite vow that his parents, that his mom had agreed to from the very beginning. All right, it doesn't really end there. Verse 7 says, and then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. Now, what's that like nice for saying? He liked her. She's pretty. All right. He saw her and he liked her, so he pursued her. And after some days, he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. All right, that same one that he had ripped apart. And behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion. And you know what comes along with bees, right? It's honey. And he scraped it onto his hand and went on, eating as he went. All right, red alert, what happened here? He went back to what? The dead body. And he got close enough where he... Now, honey is good, but I'm not eating out of a carcass of anything. But he was hungry, and he got some honey out of this carcass of the lion, and he ate that honey. All right, so again, violating his vow that he had made. And he came to his father and mother and gave some to them, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. And of course, we know why. His father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. And as soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to them, let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast, and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, put your riddle so that we may hear it. And he gives a really cool riddle. He said to them, out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. Pretty clever, right? Now, we could talk about riddles all day long, but that's not as much of a riddle as much of like an inside joke, because nobody else knows what Samson's talking about here, because his riddle has directly to do with an experience that he had, getting honey out of the lion, right? Or basically getting honey out of the lion. And for 3 days they could not solve the riddle, because they had no idea. On the 4th day, they get smart. Now, where do they go? To Samson's wife. And we're going to see the first encounter that Samson has, unfortunate encounter with one of the loves of his life. All right, Delilah is another story. We probably won't get there till next week. But with this wife, they go and they talk to her. Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. That's not even fair, is it? Like, all right, tell us the answer, because we don't want to pay up, and if you don't tell us the answer, we're going to burn your house down. That's pretty severe. All right, pretty severe. And he says, have you invited us here to impoverish us? And Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. Oh, man. Now, I get she is in fear for her father's house and for her house. But man, does she go after Samson. You only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you've not told me what it is. And he said to her, behold, I have not told my father nor my mother. And shall I tell you? And she wept before him the 7 days that their feast lasted. And on the 7th day, Samson almost held out. But on the 7th day, he told her, because she pressed him hard. And then she told the riddle to her people. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day, before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion? They solved the riddle. And he said to them, now this is a little harsh, right? If you had not plowed with my heifer, and I'm just going to let you kind of interpret that on your own. He's a little bit angry right now, okay? But if you have not, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town, and took their spoil and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger he went to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. All right, so a lot of conflict getting ready to happen here. All right, first of all, Samson gets really extremely upset at his wife, rightfully so, but also at the people. And so when the people solve the riddle, or they get the answer from his wife and they bring that answer to Samson, what are his emotions like? What does it say there? His anger burns hot, right? His anger burns hot, and what does he do? If they solved the riddle, what were they supposed to get? 30 garments, 30 changes of clothes. Does Samson just take that out of his own storehouse, out of his own riches? No, he is angry, and he goes down to Ashkelon, and what does he do? Kills people and gets the spoils of that and gives that to the people that he owed this debt to. All right, so he does pay up, but then he goes back to his father's house, and then something big happens here. The wife that kind of betrayed him is given to his companion, who was his best man. Do you think that's going to go over well? Now, he's angry, but do you think he was ready to just get rid of his wife? Well, maybe, but we're going to see that this causes quite a bit of conflict here in chapter 15. It says, after some days at the time of wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. He might be cooling down a little bit. And he said, I will go into my wife in the chamber. But her father would not allow her to go in. And her father said, Samson, I really thought that you utterly hated her. So I gave her to your friend. He has a solution. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. So he does this crazy thing. Like out of this world crazy what he does. Samson goes and he caught 300 foxes. Like, where you come up with this stuff, Samson, I don't know. But he caught 300 foxes, and then he took torches. And here's what he did. He turned them tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. All right? He basically gets the foxes' tails on fire and sets them loose. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines. And what do you think the foxes are going to do when they have flaming tails of fire? They're going to take off, right? And foxes are fast, and they're scared right now, so they are taken off into the fields of grain that the Philistines have and set fire to the stacked grain and the standing grain, as well as the olive orchards. And the Philistines said, who has done this? All right, so let's just go back for a second. Why was Samson so angry? Because his wife was given away, right? And why was his wife given away? Because she, solved the riddle, yeah. She pressured him into telling the answer, and then she gave the answer there. And then the father thought, hey, he must absolutely hate her, so let's just give her away to someone else. But that wasn't the solution that should have happened. And so what we see is that Samson gets so upset that he takes his anger and he's going to take it out on the enemy. And he says, I'm going to be completely innocent in this, because this is where his anger should burn. And now he has started a fire to all their grain and all their olive orchards. And now the Philistines are going to experience a similar emotion that Samson felt, which is absolute, utter hatred and anger. And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken a wife, and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. What do you think that's going to do? Probably going to get him a little bit more angry. Now, I'm just going to put this out there. If you're dealing with a man who's setting fire to foxes and sending them around, you may want to back off a little bit. Right? But the Philistines, they're in power right now. They're oppressing the people. It's just another man at this point. And so let's see what's going to happen. So Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit. And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow, and he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock of Etam. And then the Philistines came up and encamped in Judah and made a raid on Lehi. And the men of Judah have a response that they should have had. Why do you come up against us? They said, you've come up to bind Samson to do him as he did to us. Like, why are you taking this out on us? Your quarrels with Samson, why are you doing this to us? So 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is it that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so have I done to them. And they said to him, we have come down to bind you, that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. Samson gets this cool idea. All right, bind me then. Take me to the Philistines. Because he says, where are we in? The middle of verse 12. Swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. And they said to him, no, we're only going to bind you and give you into their hands. We surely will not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. And when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. And here's another time we hear this. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey. Just happened to see a jawbone of a donkey. Oh, red alert. What's the problem there? A dead animal, right? And so we see how important this vow is to Samson at this point. But for some reason, the Spirit of the Lord just stays with him. Even though he has broken his consecration before the Lord, he is no longer necessarily a Nazirite. He has now only got one thing left as far as that Nazirite vow. And what's the one part he still kept? His hair, right? Up to that point, he had broken the other ones, but he still has the long hair that has never been touched. But you know the story. That will be violated at some point. But the Spirit of the Lord still rushes upon him, and he finds this jawbone of a donkey out of his hands, and with it he struck 1,000 men. That's incredible. Like, the Spirit of the Lord's incredible. There were 3,000 men there that were coming to kind of take siege on Judah, the people of Judah right here. And Samson, covered with the Spirit of the Lord, takes one jawbone of a donkey. That's not even a weapon. That's just something you find on the ground. And he takes that and he strikes down 1,000. A third of the men are taken down by just a jawbone of a donkey and a man that's covered in the Spirit of the Lord. And Samson said, with a jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with a jawbone of a donkey, I have struck down 1,000 men. And as soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramath Lehi. Great name for a place. It means the hill of the jawbone. And he was very thirsty. He called upon the Lord, and the Lord said to him, you have granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant, and shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? And God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came out from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of this place was called En HaKoreh. It is at Lehi to this day. and he judged Israel in the days of Philistines for 20 years. All right? We kind of miss that part for a lot of it. We kind of take the story of consecutive events like this, but for 20 years, Samson served as a judge over Israel, and there was, it doesn't say it right here, but what we understand with a lot of the judges, it's there, and he judged and there was peace. He judged and there was peace. And so, we can talk about all of Samson's flaws, but for at least 20 years, he judged Israel and apparently did a decent job of it. So we're going to stop right there in Judges. It doesn't make sense to get into chapter 16 at this point, but we've still got about 8 minutes left in our class tonight. And I just want to start to see this, that really big themes that we'll see throughout Samson. One big one is this: those things that are dedicated to the Lord need to remain dedicated to the Lord. It doesn't make sense to make a vow to the Lord and then break it. All right, and we've talked about that with Gideon and stuff like that. But we have to make sure that what is dedicated to the Lord remains dedicated to the Lord. And I think it goes without saying what is dedicated to the Lord. For those of us who have been baptized into Christ, we made that declaration, didn't we? We made that dedication to follow after Christ, and we made that dedication that we were dedicated unto the Lord. And man, the people of God were dedicated unto the Lord, but what do they continue to do? Walk away and walk away and walk away. And we've got to be super careful that what we have dedicated to Him, we continue to stay dedicated to. All right, that's one of the major themes that we're going to see throughout Samson. So we're going to stop there for just a moment, and in 5 minutes, I want to tell you one quick thing about the trip. Can I tell you one quick thing? Okay. One quick thing is going to turn into like 5 quick things, but I promise I won't do that tonight. I'll just tell you, you'll hear about it in a couple weeks, but I don't even have a picture to show you. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but someone asked me as I was coming in, what was the favorite thing that you saw on the trip? The favorite thing that you did on the trip? And that's a really impossible question. Everybody who went will probably have a different answer, and because we all got to see things quite differently. But I had 2, and I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you one, and I'll save my real favorite for later. My second favorite was the very last thing that we got to experience. It was right outside of the walls. I forget which gate it was right outside. I think it was right outside the Lion's Gate of the walls there of Jerusalem. And it was just a set of stairs, the southern steps of the temple, and southern steps of Jerusalem there. And to me, if I looked at it, it was just a set of steps. But what happened on those steps is this would have been where Peter gave the sermon on Pentecost. And it was just really incredible to sit on those steps and to read Acts chapter 2, the sermon that Peter preached. And I wish I had the picture here, but basically if you stand at the top of those steps, you get to look out and you see like everything. And as you just look, not over Jerusalem, but you're looking at it like the old section of Jerusalem, to be able to give that sermon, looking at that. And I didn't know this, but Larry Klein, who was with us, did some research on it. And he said that the lowest number that he had seen for how many people would have been there listening to that sermon was 100,000 people. All right, that's incredible, but also kind of sad that how many were baptized that day? 3,000. That would be only 3% of the people that heard the message would have actually accepted it and followed after the Lord, if that number is correct, right? But we got to stand there, and what was really cool is I always had this question: how would they have baptized 3,000 people? I mean, they're just in the city. But if you were to walk down those steps and over to the right, just about like 10 yards, or maybe 30 yards or so, is ceremonial cleansing pools that they would have just had access to right there. And so everything just works so well together. that he gave that lesson right there on those southern steps and preached to possibly 100,000 people. 3,000 people would have decided to follow Jesus at that point and to be baptized into Christ, and they got to do it right there. And then the coolest thing is this, 3,000 people that were from all over the world, their known world, got to go take that back to their places that they lived and their cities, and the gospel just started to explode. And we got to stand in that place, and it was just really awesome. All right, so that's my second favorite part. Just to give you a heads up, my first favorite was the garden tomb because I looked and it was still empty. And it was just really cool to stand in that place. But I'll talk about it on Easter Sunday a little bit because we're going to talk about resurrection, of course. But I will bore you no longer with my stories. Maybe. Okay, so that was Pentecost, right? So Pentecost happened at that place, and then we got to go, one of the first places we went was Caesarea Maritime, which in Caesarea Maritime, it was this port city that Herod built, and there's still the remains of Herod's palace that is there. And one of the cool things that has been recently unearthed was a prison that was down below, and that Caesarea Maritime was where Paul, when he was on trial towards the ends of his life, went to trial before Felix. He would have sat at that same temple or same palace under Felix's reign and been under trial. Felix had him in prison for 2 years because he didn't want to kill him or anything like that, because it would stir up people. And so that prison that was underground would have been where Paul sat for 2 years until Festus took over. And right there, that would have been where Paul appealed to Caesar and was later sent to Rome to appeal to Caesar. But Caesarea Maritime was also a different place, or the place of different significance. When Peter left Joppa and went to meet Cornelius, he was at Caesarea Maritime, in this place where we got to stand. And one of the coolest things was to be in the place where the Gentiles had their Pentecost. At the end of that chapter, I think it's Acts chapter 25, I think it is. No, that was Paul. Acts chapter 14 or so, other side of the book, wherever it was that happened. He got to stand there, and the Holy Spirit fell on the Gentiles, and then many of them were baptized. Cornelius was there in the town as well. And so it was really neat. We got to stand on the steps where the gospel went out, all right, and where that went out to the world, but also to the place where if the Holy Spirit hadn't fallen on the Gentiles and shown that acceptance of the Gentiles right there, we wouldn't be here today. Right? It was just so cool to be in that place and just to imagine that this happened right here, or at least somewhere where I am right now, and just be so thankful for that. But that was just a couple cool things. Love you guys, and hope you have a great rest of the week. Not yet.